rate to be levied against real property within the maintenance district.
Public hearing on this.
Yes.
I will open the public hearing. I don't have any speaker cards, so I'll close the public hearing.
Here, move 9A1.
Second.
Roll call.
Council members Draymond.
Yes.
Friedman.
Yes.
Najarian.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Okay, let's move to 8A, action items. And before well, go ahead and read it into the record, Mr. Sutton.
8A is Director of Public Works regarding State Route 710 gap closure project. And A1 is a resolution opposing the tunnel alternative for the proposed gap closure for the SR710 freeway between I-10 and I-210 SR134 freeways. At 2 is a resolution supporting continued study of the tunnel alternative for the proposed gap closure of the SR710 freeway between I-10 and the I-210 SR134 freeways. And 3 is a motion providing direction to staff.
Okay, is there anyone who hasn't filled out a speaker card that would like to speak this evening? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? Thank you very much. We won't be taking any more cards. Mr. Starbird.
I'm sorry, I'm seeing hands in the audience for some reason. Excuse me. Yeah. Let me go to Steve Zern, Director of Public Works.
Not yet.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council,
Later.
we are returning to you tonight for further input and discussion on the issue of the State Route 710 gap closure and specifically the tunnel feasibility study and tunnel alternative. I say return to you because several weeks ago, staff from Caltrans and their consultants came before you to give you a presentation on that tunnel technical study and feasibility study. I think it's probably safe to say that maybe more questions were raised than answered at that particular presentation. Thus, we were asked to bring this back for further discussion, along with giving you the option to take a formal position for or against the project, or to direct staff in some other manner, such as taking no formal position at this time, waiting for further information and analysis to be done. The study, as you'll recall, was looking at 5 potential tunnel routes to close the gap where the 710 currently ends in East Los Angeles, bringing that traffic up to either directly to the 210 or to the 210 through the 2 freeway, or the 605 is one of the number 5 alternates. I'm not going to go over a lot of detail because I don't think there was a lot of detail given to you about the particular feasibility study. I think there was a focus by staff to tell you at the time that there was all of the effort was for seismic and geotechnical type work. I think there was a lot of questions about other parts and other aspects of what the impacts of this particular project may bring to the city of Glendale and other communities in this area. I will tell you there's a couple of additional items. One, we included some information on a traffic study that was conducted by ITERIS for the Southern California Association of Governments. That was released in May, I believe. It's out right now in a preliminary draft form. They're seeking comments and input on that. We have a representative from ITERIS here tonight, Mr. Davidian, who worked on that. So if you have any specific questions about that particular report, he may be able to shed some more light on that. In addition, I left at your seats tonight what has transpired recently, where Caltrans staff has issued what they call Task Order Number 5, which is some additional work that they're planning to do in the area of noise, pollution, traffic. A lot of those issues that many of you here raised with them previously, but that at the time they said weren't going to be studied in depth at the current time. So there's been apparently some change of heart. This too is out for comment. I know you didn't have time to read it. We just put it together and I wanted to get a copy over to you. With that, again, we have representative from ITERIS. Mr. Mitchell's here from our traffic engineering staff, who also sits on the technical committee. Unfortunately, I wish we could elaborate more on the project beyond what you heard from Caltrans, but that's not real possible for us because that's about the extent of what we're hearing as well. I think tonight we wanted to bring it back, let you get input from the public, raise questions, possibly send us back for more information, or to take a position on the project as it stands. So with that,
Okay, Ms. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Zern. I'm a little confused by the wording of the resolutions, or at least by the alternatives that we're being asked to give input on. On the agenda item, alternative 1 is resolution for opposing the tunnel alternative for the proposed gap closure, which sounds to me like if we are adopting that first resolution, it sounds like we would be saying we're opposing the tunnel alternative, but we would be open to, let's say, a highway alternative or an above-ground alternative. So I'm a little bit unclear about what we're actually being asked to weigh in on. Is it on a tunnel? Is it on the gap closure itself?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I drafted the resolution because of the specific issue that was going to come before you, and that's the tunnel alternative. Certainly you can discuss the entire universe of potential options for closing the gap closure, whether it be the long-running discussion of a possible above-ground freeway or grade freeway. This was essentially intended to be to focus on just the tunnel alternative. And again, should you desire to take it further than that, you have the option to do that. And one way you can get there is whether we change the resolution language, or on the third item, action item, that's motion to direct staff.
So just to clarify in my mind, because I'm not as familiar with this as Mr. Nigerian on the MTA, so whether or not there's going to be a gap closure, that's outside of our discussion or not?
That can certainly be part of your discussion. Right now, the focus, as I understood it, and Mr. Zern can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, was at the last meeting that the tunnel proposal was discussed, when staff came and provided you their technical information about what they were doing and reaching out to the public with their meetings, was to bring that back for further discussion by the City Council.
So in terms of what Caltrans is asking for input on, is it the tunnel alternative, or is it the prospect of a gap closure in general? Because I think there's a very important distinction in terms of what we will be hearing from the public tonight.
Let me just interrupt on one point. Senator Gil Cedillo authored a bill which was passed, which indicated and required that the only route for any connection between the 710 and any of the other terminus shall be a subsurface route. So the tunnel is the only alternative currently permitted under state law.
Right, but I'm still wondering whether it sounds to me from the way the resolutions read that what we're asking the public to give input on, and what we're expected to give input on, is it going to be a tunnel or something else, as opposed to, do we want a 710 gap closure at all, or don't we? And they're two very different questions, and I think we'll get very different input. If it's the first that you're being asked to give input on, is it a tunnel or is it something above ground, probably nobody here, very few people here are interested in that conversation. The conversation that I think the public's interested in is, do we want a connector built to connect the 710 to the 210 or not? And that's something very different from the resolutions that are here. And I want to be sure that what I'm going to be talking about and what the public's going to be talking about and what Caltrans wants to hear is all copacetic. And I'm really unclear at this point about what Caltrans expects to hear from us, what our scope of input has to do with, and exactly what we're being asked to weigh in on tonight. If it's technically, can a tunnel be built, that's a very different kind of conversation. I don't think most people are here to really talk about that. So if that's not what they're here to talk about, is Caltrans interested in what they are here to talk about? Or not, and I don't see that as an agenda item in front of me.
Mr. Burden, did you?
Well, I think, Mr. Mayor, Mrs. Friedman, you can weigh in on any of those things if the council so chooses. I think the staff has looked at this from the standpoint what's currently being studied is the feasibility of a tunnel. But if the council wants to broaden that to exactly the issues as you've described, then you can do that at this point. Or not weigh in at all and wait to gather more information and do more evaluation.
And let me add, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Friedman, Caltrans hasn't asked us to do this. They're not asking for this. We're doing this as a result, my thought was, as a result of some unanswered questions, some concerns that were expressed, quite a bit of concern expressed on the part of the community and council's requested, we bring this back to talk about it further. This is certainly not something Caltrans is asked to do or sanctioned, and probably doesn't want to hear it at all. But
Well, then I'm just concerned about what we have in front of us in terms of suggested resolutions. From the way it reads from the agenda item, whether or not it's a tunnel or people are for or against a tunnel alternative, is, again, it's a different question than closing the gap on. And so I think we just need to be aware, if we pass a resolution tonight or we talk about potential resolutions, that we're very clear about what we're passing, so that the message doesn't go back to Caltrans, for instance, saying, well, Glendale's, and I'm just saying, I'm not saying that's what we're going to do, but let's say hypothetically that the message is, number one, a resolution for opposing the tunnel alternative for the gap closure. Well, that's very different from maybe going back and saying, we don't want to close the 210 at all. So we'd have to come up with something different. So I'm just putting that out there, that if we're going to have that discussion, that we need to be flexible or careful in terms of how we word this. And
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Friedman, you are not restricted by the language in the resolutions to the discussion involving the gap closure and any alternative. Even though state law may restrict what can be done, you are not restricted in your conversation. The agenda item is, quote, Director of Public Works raise State Route 710 gap closure projects. The resolutions are there for you to take a stand based upon not only the suggested language that's there, but also if you want to modify them. And likewise, there is a motion to direct staff should you feel that either the resolutions themselves or even modifications to them don't suit the majority's purpose after hearing from the public of where you want to go with it. So the flexibility is there.
thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comment, Mr. Weaver?
I just want to comment, it's been 30 more years that this has been talked about. Because if you go to the end of the 210 freeway south, it stops in the middle of nowhere. Obviously, the connection was going to happen. I don't think it's about the tunnel at all. It's the impacts to La Crescenta if the tunnel is done, whether it's tunnel, above ground, whatever direction, is the secondary impacts noise-wise north end. I don't know anybody here that would object to a tunnel where the main impact would be the air quality from the ventilation stacks in the tunnel coming out if it would pollute the air. Other than that, I don't care. It's what comes out of that end, the northern end.
I understand that.
So, yeah, I just clarify. I don't think anybody here cares. Tunnel, surface, so what? That's what happens.
Well, there's a lot of issues, tunnel versus surface as well. Trust me.
Oh, I know.
It's
So
not just the
we're
traffic
sitting here,
impacts.
the main thing is what's going to happen in the upper end. Yeah, if it's surface on down from where it ends at the 5 now, yeah, tremendous, because of all the real estate that's there, that all the homes, everything will be destroyed. So if it's going to happen anywhere, it's going to be a tunnel. That's pretty obvious. That's why they're studying the tunnel alternative.
Any other comments or questions from the staff? Okay, we'll go to the public. I have approximately 27 cards. Try to stick to the subject at hand. We'll start with Krista Smiley, followed by Barbara Messina. Marty.
Hi, good evening. My name is Krista Smiley. I'm a Montrose resident and Honorable Mayor and council members. Just briefly, because there's a lot of people behind me, I'm, of course, opposed to the 710, and now I'm more confused than I was when I came in the door. So I think a lot more study. I don't want a tunnel. You know, I know that Southern California, lived here all my life. I've lived all over L.A. Grow up. I now have, the past 20 years, my family, we've lived in Montrose, love it. But I know this issue like a lot of us do. And there is a problem with our traffic, and it is something that has to be addressed. I mean, I drive over the Grapevine several times a month to visit my older children, and, you know, we all know what a rough ride that is. But I really think a lot of thought, and not being rushed into any decisions that impact not just La Crescenta Montrose, but all of Southern California. I mean, it's a domino effect here, and your decision is really important that you sit down and really, really think about it. A tunnel to me environmentally is just crazy. You know, I don't really understand it. I'm not an engineer. I personally look at it as just a resident that, you know, growing up, we heard that when La Crescenta, when they built the freeway up here, people lost their homes. You know, I sympathize with people that live in the area that might have lost their home, but they should have built it years ago, the freeway. You know, so that's my personal thought, and no tunnel, and maybe some other more rail, some other more practical way of building and figuring out the traffic situation for SoCal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Barbara Messina, followed by Tom King.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council. My name is Barbara Messina. I am City Councilwoman in the City of Alhambra and third Vice President of the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments. I can share Councilwoman Friedman's frustrations. I have personally been involved on this particular project for 22 years of my tenure as an elected official on this particular project. It is truly a regional problem, and that's how we have to look at it. I want to correct the gentleman who said it ends in East Los Angeles. It ends in Alhambra, and it has for 40 years. We have lived with that. It was never intended to end in Alhambra and end in Pasadena. It was intended to be a connection to our freeway system. I currently sit on SCAG's Regional Council Board and have been on transportation for 8 years, and our main focus is looking at regional solutions to our problems. And this particular gap is the sole remaining gap that SCAG has to deal with, and it is one of the priority items in their regional transportation plan. And I'm asking you tonight that if you still have questions and doubts, which you obviously do, hold off making a decision until you do. There is no project on the books yet, so you have no idea right now how it's going to affect Glendale. And until that is the case, I don't think it's fair for you to make a decision one way or another. I can only impress upon you, Mr. Najarian, you're chair of MTA. We look to you for regional solutions and regional leadership, and this is truly a regional problem. You will hear from other members of elected cities, so that is my hope that you will really take this into consideration on the regional importance of connecting these. We have a freeway system now that doesn't operate at its maximum efficiency because you have that missing gap. Freeways cannot flow interactively, so that is the main issue and concern that you should be looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom King, followed by Eugene Sun.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero. I'm Tom King. I'm the president of the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, which represents 31 cities located to the east of you, all the way out to Claremont, down into Monterey Park, all the way out to Pomona. And these 31 cities are asking for your support to close the gap on the 710 freeway. The 710 freeway gap closure has been supported by the MTA, Caltrans, SCAG for a number of years. Now, it's estimated that this project will eliminate over 1 ton of emissions per day. It will affect the regional congestion waiting time by 6.2 million commute hours. That's now, last week I spoke with Mike Tinn from the city of South Pasadena, and Mike assured me that they were going to work with Caltrans to work towards a solution of this problem. And the technological problems of air pollution, which I think was Councilmember Weaver mentioned, can be overcome by technology.
Hey, excuse me. Look, I'm going to have you removed if I continue to hear you speak and make comments when speakers are at the podium, okay? It's going to be a long night, so please try to contain yourself.
Mayor, I'm going to shorten my comments. I just want to say that I think that we need to look at this regionally. It's like having a coronary bypass that's needed. Our community, the people that live east of you are suffering because of the lack of connectivity. But I want to talk about your town. I have some connection to your city. I met my wife in this city where the Galleria was. I bought my Dodge Surfer van at Glendale Dodge, and she bought her Camaro at Alex Gwynn, is it? Anyway, this is a beautiful city, and I remember back when the freeways were being put through here, and the difficulties with the 210 and the difficulties with the 2. But imagine how you have a beautiful city, but imagine how your city would look if the freeways ended at your city limits and dumped all the traffic on Brand Boulevard or Colorado. And that's what the cities of Alhambra and Monterey Park are facing. Now, I'm going to give you a little personal perspective. My father, 93 years old, died a little over a year ago, March. And I tried to get to him, and it was his time, so I didn't make it. I was stuck on Fremont Avenue in Alhambra for over an hour in traffic that was going both directions, bumper to bumper. And when I was sitting on that freeway, the thing that went through my mind is, my God, what if somebody had to take an ambulance to a hospital? They couldn't get there from here. So as leaders, as elected officials, we're charged with making a difference. And I think you can show your leadership in making a difference, in joining with the other communities east of here, and looking at this as a regional problem, a regional solution. Because I will tell you, if the solution and problem existed in this city, I'd be here to support you. Thank you.
Thank you. Eugene Sun, followed by Clyde Williams.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. I'm Eugene Sun, Mayor of City of San Marino. I come before you to state the City Council's unanimous support of the completion of the 710 connector. As you know, San Marino has historically opposed the 710 for decades. Why we have change of mind? Because if you look at big picture and with the advancement of technology, I think it's about time that a 710 connector be completed. Even though San Marino is marginally affected by the 710, but I think it should alleviate the congestion on Freeway 5, 134, 2, and it will make the freeway system in Southern California more functional. So with that, I hope with your collective wisdom, you will arrive at the conclusion as ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Clyde Williams, followed by Richard Schneider.
Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA. 30-year resident of Northeast LA, 25 years working around Caltrans. I have 20 years of experience in Parsons Corporation, engineering and sciences, and environmental sciences. I have designed, planned, constructed tunnels, including the RTD MTA Red Line Phase 1, downtown LA. The problem is not the tunnel. The problem is making the tunnel. Now, of the three most probable practical routes, one of which is Verdugo and Eagle Rock, and it's the portal there. Consider the impacts of removing 3 million cubic yards of tunnel muck. The ventilation from 5 miles of tunnels times 2. You are being baited, and it will then be switched. Caltrans has done it before. They told us, we'll build a trench through 400 houses in El Sereno district. Supposedly, Ed Reyes has opposed it. Jose Huizar and Antonio have recommended all of the portal be south of Valley in Alhambra. Basically, let those who benefit the most endure the most. What benefit is it for you? If you have the interchange at Verdugo and SR2, I don't think it will be of much benefit to you to have that there, especially during the construction. Yes, they can clean the air except for one thing. It costs a lot of money to clean the air. I can make it good enough. However, have they ever mentioned what happens when there's a fire? No. Caltrans has avoided various issues that are particular concerns to road tunnels. They say, oh, no problem with fire. Oh, don't talk to the French, the Italians, and the Swiss regarding road tunnel fires. There are problems. Who's going to respond? Well, whoever is at the portal. Whose fire trucks have to go into the tunnel and bring out the bodies and the remains. So I would highly recommend that you oppose 710 now as a tunnel, surface, or elevated. And then let Caltrans prove to you that they can do it to the best that they can and to your benefit. Let those who benefit the most endure the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Schneider, followed by Timo or Johnny.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, honorable council members. My name is Richard Schneider. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of the City of South Pasadena. Excuse me. I'm representing the city, so I'll confine my comments to the city's position and not my personal position. I come here with two purposes in mind. One is I would like to urge you to oppose the extension of the 710 by any route, whether it be on the surface, cut and cover, or through a tunnel. And second, I would like to explain the City of South Pasadena's position because I think there's been some misunderstanding of it recently. The governing resolution of the City of South Pasadena was passed in 2003 and was reiterated in 2007. It was essentially the identical resolution. We only added two different words, and those were the words route neutral. And that was because Congressman Adam Schiff supplied some money to the study of the technical feasibility, and he insisted that since this is a new project, that the slate be wiped clean and that you take a fresh look at it. So I would like to read you the portion of our resolution, which is really important. I'll skip the whereases. Suffice it to say that the City Council of South Pasadena has opposed this extension of Highway 7 and now 710 since 1947. Section 1 of our resolution is the South Pasadena City Council does hereby oppose the proposed 710 freeway extension through the communities of South Pasadena, El Sereno, and Pasadena, and wholeheartedly supports the fiscally and environmentally responsible alternative to the multi-mode, low-build transportation proposal. That has been our position. It has always been our position that we are opposed to the extension of the 710 by any means. The second part of this resolution concerns the tunnel. And this one reads the following. The South Pasadena City Council does not oppose sound route-neutral research, and those are the two words that were inserted, of a bored tunnel alternative to the construction of a surface freeway in the proposed Route 710 corridor. The ultimate position of the South Pasadena City Council will depend on the integrity of the research to enable assessment of a bored tunnel alternatives, benefits and costs, both social and fiscal, which a bored tunnel alternative might produce, with the proviso that this statement does nothing to compromise the litigation in place and does not waive any future rights. And I can leave this with your city clerk for you to look at if you need to. It's important to note that in this resolution, it says does not oppose. These words were chosen very carefully by the City Council and by our special legal counsel. It does not say the South Pass supports a tunnel. It does not say South Pass supports a study of a tunnel. It does not even say that South Pasadena is neutral. It says we do not oppose sound research. And that's all it says. And that's all that our governing resolution says. It is in opposition to the 710, and we do not oppose sound research for the tunnel.
Okay, please try to wrap it up.
Okay, I'm sorry. I will very quickly go through Senate Bill 545.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to tell you what...
Oh, that's all right. Just submit it to the clerk. I can perhaps read a little bit later. Thank you for coming, sir. Timo Arjani, followed by Bob Huddy.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm Timo Arjani. I'm a resident of Glendale and a voter in Glendale. So I'm speaking as a member of Glendale, not as an engineer, but as a resident here. I would respectfully suggest that you vote in favor of the 710 freeway going through and completing its course. I may also suggest that any vote to bring the 710 extension to Glendale should not be supported. On the other hand, if you want to postpone the decision till more traffic study has been done, that should be fine. As was mentioned earlier, there was a study done a couple of months ago, and the voters in Glendale, by a majority of 2.4 to 1, accepted and proposed that yes, the 710 freeway extension should go on. The reduction in traffic would be tremendously beneficial for Glendale residents. The air pollution and other things mentioned would also be beneficial. And I think you heard the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Huddy, followed by Margaret Hammond.
My name is Bob Huddy. I'm a retired employee of SCAG. I'm a consultant in transportation with over 35 years in transportation business. I'm very knowledgeable of this particular study that was done. I was the project manager for the tunnel study when I retired from SCAG last year. I'm now in private practice. The tunnel is a long-standing, is a solution to a very long-standing gap closure. We've had this gap closure since 1953 when the state route was adopted. It's almost as old as I am. It's creating numerous problems for the cities along the way. Alhambra has serious problems with over 100,000 cars trying to access the stubs. Pasadena has nearly 60,000 cars a day accessing the stubs. We have major gridlock in Pasadena because of the lack of completion of this critical link. This critical link, the tunnel alternative, has been looked at now for about 7 years. It has brought in a number of foreign firms who have built successful tunnels, the M30 tunnel around Madrid, tunnels on the north and south end of Madrid that are similar to this, the ring road around Paris through a environmentally sensitive community called Versailles was completed recently and open. So the tunnel technology is well established. Our friends in Russia are building a 4-mile tunnel, 53 feet in diameter, on the ring road around Moscow. Tunnels are feasible. They're done all over the world. Yes, ask the firemen from Spain and Switzerland and France to come and identify their fire suppression technologies, their management and control technologies. This will be a toll facility. It will be paid for by tolls of users that will mitigate the traffic. Congestion tolling similar to what is used in the 91 and the 15 down in San Diego County. You'll pay a higher toll at rush hour in order to maintain the traffic flow and minimize the impacts. The air quality. I spent 15 years on the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Committee. When I started, we had no regulations on trucks until the Coalition for Clean Air won the lawsuit in 1993. By 2015, when construction for this project starts, we will have over a 97% reduction in truck emissions, a major concern to many people along the route. The technology is there, it's working. Just like our cars today are 99.9% cleaner than they were in 1970 when we completed the Route 2, after a great fight, and many of the cities here today coming to your assistance in that fight to get the funding out of the state legislature. So I urge you to postpone action on this. There is no action required to oppose this route. There's no action required to oppose this tunnel. This tunnel will have to go through further feasibility study. It will have to go through further environmental analysis, and if at such time you find it not to your advantage to relieve traffic on the 2 and the I-5 and have traffic divert around the city of Glendale, then you can take action at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret Hammond, followed by Richard Cross.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, and audience. My name is Margaret Hammond. I have and I still feel that anything that would affect the quality of life for the residents of La Cañada, Montrose, La Crescenta should be opposed. Because if you end up with all that additional traffic, and I don't know how many of you travel the 5, I traveled it this weekend, and again, it's the trucks that are the bane of the whole existence of, and we know that they're necessary. But why couldn't there be a better system from Long Beach, a rail system of some kind? Put those trucks on at the ports down there. And instead of using them, putting them on the freeways, put them on the rails. It would be much easier. I mean, they could take several at a time rather than trucks spewing the diesel all along. If you got 10, I don't know how many one carrier could take at a time, one rail, I have no idea, one rail car. But it's got to be better than all those trucks spewing out the fumes. And also ending up in La Cañada alone, in that area, there are 10 or 12 schools right there. And when you live within the distance of that freeway, which my daughter happens to live there, it's unbelievable at times. The smog is unbelievable from the traffic. And if that 710, whether it's tunnel or surface, ends up spewing out all that traffic, it's going to be unbelievable. So I definitely feel that while I know it's something that has to be taken care of, let's look at other things in addition to finishing the closure. Let's look at something that will take care of all that, those trucks that will end up coming either going east or west on the 210. Thank you.
Richard Cross, followed by Mary Ann Parada.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I am a former City Councilman from Boulder, Colorado, had 2 terms, and I understand pretty much what you're going through, not particularly with this situation that you have here, which is very complex. But it seems to me it's very clear that we don't have enough information to make a decision at this particular point in time, and I would suggest to you that you pass and wait for more clearly defined research that will be coming along. I just think that was the best thing for everybody to know. Thank you for the work and what you've been doing, and that's the subject of the substance of my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mary Ann Parada, followed by Glenn Duncan.
Hi, my name is Mary Ann Parada. I'm from the city of South Pasadena, and I've been fighting against the second freeway in our town of over 3.4 square miles for over 40 years. The air pollution studies at SC and UCLA have determined that the children of Los Angeles County have lost 15% of their lung function due to mobile sources. In fact, the children living close to the ports of Long Beach and the port of LA use inhalers every day. They even have inhalers at their schools. They're breathing in the diesel emissions along the 710 freeway. In a recent LA Times opinion piece, I don't know if you saw it, I'll quote it. I'll quote, "Smog, it turns out, can have devastating effects not on just lungs, but on hearts, brains, and fetal development." Quote, in fact, the UCLA Institute of the Environment concluded that the health problems of premature births, low birth rates, birth defects, respiratory diseases were of such magnitude as to require drastic changes to motor vehicles and transportation systems over the next decades. The 710 freeway is designated as a corridor of national significance to promote international trade. 40% of the cargo that comes out of the ports goes to Middle America. So they're going through our urban communities to get to Middle America. The city of Glendale itself is circled by 3 freeways today. If this tunnel is built, there will be 300,000 cars and trucks today that are not in those tunnels, in the portals now. 35 to 40% of these trucks and cars will be diverted because they will refuse to pay the toll, the $6 tolls, and they will then continue on surface streets. from the 134, your streets impacted from these diverted cars and trucks will probably congest Broadway, Harvey, Glen Oaks, Fernando Road, and Fremont in Alhambra. South Pasadena has spent over $2 million over the last 40 years to protect ourselves from the effects of this freeway, because the original freeway is a surface freeway which would bisect us north and south, and the Pasadena bisects us east and west, so we'd be drawn and quartered, so we've been fighting for our life. I urge you to oppose the 710 freeway today and save the city of Glendale from spending millions of dollars in the next 20 years to protect your town and your citizens' health. Thank you. If you want a copy of this, I'll be glad to give it to you.
Turn it into Glenn Duncan, followed by Sarah Enslow.
My name is Glenn Duncan. I'm representing the South Pasadena Preservation Foundation, that is one of 8 co-litigants against the extension of the 710 in 1998. Those co-litigants were the National Trust for Historic Preservation, California Preservation Foundation, the Sierra Club, LA Conservancy, Pasadena Heritage, the City of South Pasadena, South Pasadena Unified School District, and my organization, the Preservation Foundation of South Pasadena. Because of that lawsuit and Judge Pragerson's ruling that the benefits did not justify the devastation, the Federal Highways rescinded the ROD, the record of decision approving of that route, and that was later also the California Transportation Commission withdrew their support of it also. And since that time, there's been no 710 project on the books, and still, even with 25 years of and 4 drafts of the EIR, it still has not been demonstrated that any connection of this route is going to improve traffic in the San Gabriel Valley. Number 2, now that they're proposing the tunnel, there is no sensible study that demonstrates that it will reduce traffic times. And most important, perhaps, it has not been demonstrated that the project is financially feasible. SCAG has estimated $11.8 billion, and a private investor then would have to recover that money in tolls. So how many people are going to pay $7, $8, $9 to travel 4, 5, 6 miles? Financial feasibility needs to be demonstrated before an EIR is done. They need to demonstrate that this is actually going to solve a problem, not exacerbate a problem, before we go to an EIR. They're now trying to push forward in this draft number 5. They're trying to push forward a quick and easy EIR and avoid it and push it through. And I think anything you can do to stop that and to halt that so that that doesn't happen would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra Enslow. Robbie Hunter, followed by Nat Reed. Robbie Hunter, followed by Nat Reed.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Robbie Hunter. I'm here representing the building construction trades of Los Angeles and Orange County. Good evening, council members. The Building Trade Council represents 140,000 tradesmen and apprentices in the Los Angeles area, over 500 of whom live in the city of Glendale. We are here tonight to ask for your support for the continuing of the study, and it is only a study. It is not the building. It is a study of the feasibility of this project and possible funding of the completion of the 710. As you probably know, the 710 completion project has been under discussion for over 30 years, and while the traffic has continued to build and pollution from stalled traffic has continued to increase, and business has been continued to suffer because of the artificial roadblock that fails to complete the freeway has created. Every city pollution in the area has provided evidence that polling data that the agreement that agree that the time has come to complete the 710, and we agree with that. The time is right to reduce the traffic congestion, reduce pollution, and climate improvement. The traffic roadblock has created so much damage to our family and to our business. The time is also right to create jobs in construction and complete the long-needed connection for the permanent jobs that these will provide for business here will be more efficient. We are asking for you to vote against the motion on tonight to oppose the 710 and to support the motion to endorse the tunnel alternative to complete the 710 freeway. Thank you for your time, and I got to say it was a very enjoyable meeting. It was great to see the kids in here and to see that what the city does with its citizens. Mr. Nigerian, I got to say I was at your when you chaired the MTA meeting, and you got your hands full. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Nat Reed, followed by Erica Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. You've been very patient tonight. This is a subject with so many aspects, and I appreciate your time in plowing through that. I'm Nat Reed. I live in Glendale. First moved to Glendale in 1957. Also chair of the 710 Freeway Coalition. One of the alternatives that Caltrans is looking at, and has been the subject of these tunnel study presentations that have been made, which is what triggered this, is an alternative as part of the, quote, route neutral perspective that would build the 710 to Glendale. This is a crazy, crazy idea. And in all of the meetings in La Crescenta, person after person has come to the mic and say, what can they be thinking? This is just Alice in Wonderland, and I agree with that. And I would urge you to take a position against building the 710 to Glendale. That's the most direct effect that is being considered now, and let's get that off the table. All of us can agree on that. I would urge you not to oppose the general 710 because there's no project on the table. I think we need those traffic data. We need the environmental studies to that's proposed will be on our city. And I think it's premature to take a position without a project. Also, we voters of Glendale are very intelligent people. We're the ones who chose the best possible city council. We were surveyed in a poll, and I know that you're familiar with the poll, but I brought copies to other copies to share, which showed that a scientific poll asking the straight up question, do you oppose or support completion of the 710 freeway? 2.4 to 1, 2.5 to 1 were in favor of that. I've got the full study. If you have skepticism about it, I would urge you to share this with poll authorities, poll experts of any polling firm to judge this, or take your own poll. It will come out 2.5 to 1. So I would urge you to oppose the idea of building a freeway from Cal State LA toward Glendale. Crazy, crazy idea. And then wait for a project and facts in which to make your final decision. I will leave these for you. Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for your time.
Turn it into the clerk. Erica Golden, followed by Bill Wiseman.
Honorable Mayor and
members of the City Council. My name is Erica Golden. I am a Glendale resident. I live just west of the Galleria, next to Fire Station 21, and I saw several familiar faces. I walked in here today, living next to the fire department. I'm self-employed. I am in business-to-business sales, and I spend a lot of my time every day on those highways, oftentimes stuck in traffic while trying to reach my clients. Completion of the 710 freeway will alleviate traffic on the 2 and the 5. Studies have proven this. That's less time for people like me and you. It's less time we have to spend on the highways stuck in traffic. That will alleviate so many of the city's problems. Please consider all your options and think of the citizens of Glendale. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bill Wiseman, followed by Al Hoffman.
For each council member. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, and the public. My name is Bill Weissman, resident of far north Glendale. I've attended quite a few meetings in the last several months regarding the proposed project, and I'm absolutely amazed tonight to finally hear the word toll spoken in public. Yes, folks, this is going to be a toll road. Let's stop saying that this tunnel is closing a gap in the freeway system. There is nothing free about it. It is adding a toll road segment to the existing freeway system. It's going to cost at least $1 billion per mile to build this tunnel. The lowest estimate I've ever heard for construction cost is $6 billion. I believe we heard $11.8 billion tonight. So, you know, Senator Dirksen said $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Pretty soon it starts adding up to real money. The federal government does not have $6 billion to build this project. Neither does the state of California. So the financing behind it, and I've passed out a document to you, a product of the financial planning charrette that was held at the USC Keston Institute in December of 2007. This document is only 14 pages long, but I strongly urge you to read it if you haven't read it already, because it lays out the scheme by which this project is planned to be financed, and the fact that it's going to be run as a private-public partnership and a toll road. I would also ask you to take a look at Appendix B, which lists the people who participated in this financial planning charrette. This will give you an idea of who some of the key players are behind this effort. Players from outfits like J.P. Morgan that have bailout money that they want to invest in infrastructure, and representatives from construction companies like Grupo ACS, the large Spanish construction firm that builds dams and high-speed rail systems and highway tunnels all over the world. Now, a planning charrette, as I'm sure Mr. Hagani would be able to tell you, is supposed to include all stakeholders. And this one most patently did not include all stakeholders, and so I strongly urge you to read this document. Some other things I might want to mention before I go. The 2 freeway was originally planned to terminate in Beverly Hills, not terminate in Silver Lake where it just ends there on the street. I think this is outrageous. When are we going to close this gap in the 2 freeways so us people in Glendale can drive a freeway directly to Beverly Hills? I would also like to ask, what freeway project in the history of Southern California has ever reduced pollution and congestion, let's say 1 year after it was completed? The 105? I don't think so. The 210 completion out to San Bernardino? No. That's increased our traffic, it's increased our pollution, and it's increased the noise in the Crescenta Valley. I would also, in closing, ask you to consider what happens when the gas prices go up. With the toll roads in Orange County, they didn't meet their revenue projections, and they had to come to the taxpayers to ask for a bailout. So please consider that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Al Hoffman, followed by Laura Lasso.
Mayor Quintero, council, staff, Al Hoffman, resident of Glendale. Well, I'm a Glendale native and travel all these freeways around here, and I loathe every time I have to go down to 5 to get around to go over to Orange County when my daughter was going to Long Beach State. It would have been great if I could have just kept going on the 710 down to connect to the 710, but we have to go around through the 5, or we go down to 2 and go trucking through Glendale Boulevard, past Echo Lake, and onto one of the freeways down there. Freeways make sense. Now, if all the cities had the attitude of South Pasadena, we wouldn't have any freeways. I mean, they're pollution causers. Stop-and-go traffic is where your pollution comes from cars. Now, I don't understand why, if this freeway was completed, I do not like the tunnel. It should have just been done. The Caltrans, I believe, has the property. They bought the property, I think, when they first planned the freeway. And it should have been, and I believe subsurface, Councilman Najarian, means below surface, not a tunnel. It's like La Cañada. When they were doing the La Cañada one, it was going to be on the surface, and we fought and fought and fought, and they finally lowered it through La Cañada. Now, the La Cañada people lost out, so I don't know how South Pasadena feels they are privy to not having it. You know, I mean, it's the way things are. And the 2 freeways should be completed. It actually, I don't think it went to Beverly Hills. If it goes right to LAX, if you look at how it goes. But anyhow, no, the freeway would be good, and I think it should be done. And I don't like the tunnel. I wish they could just do it above ground and continue where it goes down now, right on through. And I'm sure buying all the houses and moving the historic ones and everything would be a whole lot cheaper than building that tunnel. I just can't envision the tunnel. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Lasso, followed by David Myers.
Good evening. I'm Laura Lasso. I'm the mayor of your neighboring community, La Cañada Flint Ridge. And for our communities, it really makes no difference whether the traffic comes from a tunnel or on the surface. The results are the same. And frankly, for you, it makes no difference whether the tunnel connects into the 2 or the 134 and the 210, because it still impacts the city of Glendale, and it would be disingenuous to say otherwise. So what does this tunnel do? And what do we know? We know from this traffic study, and I've read this, it's hard reading, that we will see, with the completion of the tunnel, 30,000 more vehicles per day on the 210 freeway. We will see 850 trucks per hour in peak hours more on the 210 freeway. We will see surface streets that are not fixed. The people of Alhambra are looking for this as the solution. There were 80 segments studied in this traffic study that were currently operating over capacity at level of service F, and as you know, that's gridlock. When the tunnel is completed, 70% of those will remain at level of service F. Most of the streets that are anticipated to benefit from the tunnel will remain at capacity at level of service F, such as Fair Oaks Boulevard, Fremont Avenue, Los Robles, Garfield, and Atlantic. So those very people that are looking for the tunnel to be a panacea for them, they aren't going to see that. In addition, at least 12 arterial streets will experience higher volumes of traffic solely due to the tunnel. That's what this study says. In Glendale, those streets are Foothill Boulevard that runs through La Cañada, La Crescenta, and Glendale, Glen Oaks Boulevard in Glendale and Burbank, Verdugo Boulevard in Glendale, San Fernando Boulevard in Glendale, Burbank, and Los Angeles. So if you think that you could ignore this idea and that this 210 and the adjacent streets will have no impact on your community, that is incorrect. The other problem about this study is that it was done without consideration of the idea that this was a toll tunnel. So, study done, considering everybody's going to take that tunnel, but now it's a toll. Well, what percentage of those people aren't going to go on that tunnel and continue to use the surface streets because they don't want to pay the toll? The impacts that I just read to you don't consider that yet at all. Regionally, we need to look regionally, but we need to look regionally with our eyes open. A solution that isn't a solution for one area, because it isn't for the current area, and a solution that creates more problems in another area is no solution at all. We need to not spend these billions of dollars on a tunnel. We need to forget the antiquated ideas of freeways, much better put to use to move freight traffic, get people out of their cars into public transportation. This tunnel is a steamroller, and if you, in your consideration, believe that it is not in the best interest of the residents of Glendale, I urge you to get on board today in opposition and do it loudly and quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. David Myers, followed by Brian Ellis.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero, council members, staff, and the public. My name is David Myers. Glendale needs to oppose the 710 toll tunnel now. This tunnel is not being constructed for the commuter in a passenger car. This is being constructed for trucks. And this is not a North Glendale or a South Glendale issue. This is a Glendale issue. We're in the middle. We really are. I know some people in Glendale said, it's in the foothills, it's not my problem, or it doesn't affect me. I've even heard somebody say, well, there's not a lot of trucks on the 134. Yet, I would have to say that. Major impacts to the 134. Let's not forget that where this tunnel is going, where its terminus is at the 134-210 interchange. So you're going to have cars coming up the 710, bypassing the 5, so the 710 to the 134 to the 101, bypassing the 5. They'll do that just like they bypass the 10 by taking the 15 down and cutting across the 210 straight across. And we've seen a huge number of trucks in the area. This is always, on that note real quick, I'm not sure how anybody in the San Gabriel Valley can say that this is going to be the solution to all their problems. The 210's gridlocked, so is the 60, and so is the 10, eastbound, westbound. This is just going to add more to it. This is not going to solve those gridlock issues on any of those east-west freeways. And this is always about the money. Prop R last November, it passed. One of the non-public transit items identified in the half sales tax increase is the I-10-710 North Gap closure. That's this. Sales tax measure, it provides $780 million funding for this. That's insane. That's my money, that's your money, it's half a cent. This is hundreds of millions of dollars working against us. And what they keep saying is, we need to study it more. Right, let's keep it working. Let's keep you working. We're wasting our money with all these studies. Let's spend close to $1 billion with a decent idea. How about spending on the existing infrastructure we already have? First of all, starting with the East LA connection where the 5 chokes to 2 lanes. If Caltrans really fixed the 5, 10, 60 interchange instead of building this tunnel, we probably wouldn't even be talking about it. And in closing, all I really want for LA County, all I really want is for LA County's part of the 5 to be as nice as Orange County's. If we had 5 and 6 lanes, we wouldn't even be here discussing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Ellis, followed by Robert DiPietro.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Brian Ellis. I'm a resident of Northwest Glendale. I'm here tonight on my own volition to ask you to either support the completion of the 710 link at the best or not to oppose it. I've been in California for 35 years. I've lived in Glendale for 31 or so of those years. I've always been amazed that the 710 link is not completed. Your responsibility to the residents and voters of Glendale includes those of us on the west side of town who take the burden of the trucks on the 5 freeway. The 710 will improve traffic on the 5. It will improve traffic in places. There are lots of opinions here. Study it some more. Please don't oppose it. Thank you.
Robert DiPietro, followed by Bill Graham.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, I'm Robert DiPietro. We're property owners in Glendale. We're also property owners in some of the adjacent communities. I'm a resident of Los Feliz, but I'm here tonight because clearly the completion of the link, the 710 link, is something that has been planned or was planned when the freeway system was designed many decades ago and needs to be completed. The logic, at least of following the idea of diverting the link in various directions, should be followed, and I think that the idea of opposing it where it comes over to Glendale has a great deal of logic. First of all, it lengthens the route, and it also it does not lead to a more direct route. I would at least ask that you not take a stand, but if you do take a stand, that it be in support of at least the further study of the proposal. The link is a necessary link, and it would benefit Glendale by providing additional routes towards Long Beach in Orange County, which don't exist now unless a person is more diverted down the 5 freeway, providing more congestion there. It would increase vehicle safety. It would decrease pollution by decreasing vehicle miles and also the idling and traffic that occurs now. Glendale, not only Glendale would benefit, but the adjacent communities would benefit. And I think that in terms of the benefit, it would be a benefit for the greater whole. I think that there's definitely impacts to someone, but I think we need to look at this issue globally and realize that what we need to do is come up with a solution, and that solution is the link that will provide a greater benefit to the communities at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Graham, followed by Harry Knapp.
Good evening, Mr. Quintero, members of council. My name is Bill Graham. I'm a Republican, pro-business resident of Burbank. As Mr. Quintero and Mr. Weaver know, I've been involved with the 710 issue for a long time. A few of us have formed a PAC called Communities Against the 710 Freeway. All we've really done so far is put up a website, www.communitiesagainst710.com. You know, Nat Reed has been the paid lobbyist for Alhambra for a generation, and he's been spinning just as long. Never seen him spin like tonight. We all know it's not coming to Glendale. Mr. Reed would bring his issue to nonprofits and business groups, stressing how important and vital the 710 is to business. But Nat was so busy with the 710, sometimes Glendale's business community suffered. Like when the city tried to balance their budget on the backs of the business community by imposing a 7% tax on long-distance usage. This was in the 90s. Nestle, IHOP, all the big businesses were up in arms. I remember asking Mr. Reed for help on this. He's a community leader. He wasn't interested, but he always had time to push the 710. Mr. Reed pushes this idea that the 710 extension is the sole missing link in our transportation system. He knows better. And Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Ellis should take a look at Caltrans master plan from the 50s. Only 61% of those freeways were built. And yes, indeed, the 2 was slated to go through Beverly Hills. It doesn't because cities and counties have the legal right to make their own transportation decisions. And this is a legal right that Caltrans, Alhambra, and Nat Reed have tried to rip away from an independent city. And they've been at it for decades, all at taxpayer expense. This idea that this is only South Pasadena's fight is nonsense. Put this tunnel through, the 210's going to clog. You know how La Cañadans know that? Because Caltrans' own statistics show it. And if they go back to an overground freeway, it's not South Pasadena that loses the majority of the homes. That dishonor goes to the Los Angeles community of El Sereno. There is an alternative to the 710. It's called the multimodal low build. Admittedly, South Pasadena has done a poor job marketing the plan. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be considered. Mr. Reed has commissioned a couple of questionable polls here in Glendale and in South Pasadena, too. If the respondents were not made aware of the low build, then they are bogus polls. Caltrans, Alhambra, and Nat Reed might scoff at the low build, but Glendale's last 3 congressional representatives have all supported it. And to my fellow Republicans watching at home, the environmental concerns on this issue is legitimate. But this is not just a bunch of environmentalist stifling progress. Carlos Moorhead wrote extensively about the negative effects of the 710 on the 210. And every year, Jim Rogan made sure, may I have an extra minute?
No, or can't. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Please oppose a tunnel.
Harry Knapp, followed by Phil Putnam.
You're a little hard on him because he's got Mr. Nader from...
Harry Knapp, 417 Central, South Pasadena. I served 13 years on the City Council in South Pasadena, ending in 2003 as mayor, and I was honored to serve with one of your former colleagues, Eileen Gibbons, on the original Arroyo Verdugo board. On your time chart in here, you're missing one report came out in 2006. This idea popped up back in 2002, and they did a quote, a feasibility study, which was released in 2006, and you should read it because we got called the fatal flaw analysis is what it was. But it was a report that there was enough information in there that you could really tell it was a really terrible idea. And it really fails on all 3 fronts: transportation, solution, pollution, and cost, which has been mentioned before. Let me quote from Doug Failing, district director, local district director. And this is a quote that appeared in the San Marino Tribune. That cancer and emphysema rates are higher near tunnels is absolutely a true statement. And this is Doug Failing. Imagine yourself flying into LAX as you come in and you can see the LA basin, the semicircular basin, 13 million people down there spewing out all this pollution on all those freeways, all those city streets with an inversion layer over it. You're telling me that this little 4.5-mile connector over here is going to make a positive contribution. I do have an engineering degree. I have some technical thinking ability. As far as removing congestion off the streets, in South Pasadena, Fair Oaks, it's terrible, and I wish we could solve it, but this is not the solution. Anybody living in the southern part of Pasadena, South Pass, San Marino, Arcadia, Alhambra, you have to be on a freeway to use the tunnel. Any delivery or any resident, where are they going to get off and on the 710? They're going to get off and on Valley Boulevard, just like they do now. It's not going to do the darn thing. They're not going to go all the way through the tunnel up to Pasadena and make their way back down south again. I can't understand San Marino's position on this. If you're on a truck on a 10 making a delivery to San Marino, you're going to go off on Garfield Boulevard. If you're on the 710, you're going to get off at Valley Boulevard. You're not going to go up to Pasadena and circle all the way back down again. I mean, it's ridiculous. So it's really a bad idea. I don't have a solution for all the problems, but this isn't it. And I ask for your no vote on your negative vote on the resolution. Thanks.
Thank you. Philip Putnam, followed by Mike Mohill.
Thank you. My name is Philip Putnam. I'm a city council member from the city of South Pasadena, immediate past member, and our city's representative to the Tunnel Feasibility Steering Committee. I've been involved with this study. I was involved with the first study as the city's representative, and I've been involved with this study, and I'm quite familiar with it. As Mr. Weaver pointed out earlier, and other people have later on, there's 2 issues here tonight. I'm not going to address the first issue. Many people have already done that. That's whether the 710 should be completed at all. Our city's position is quite firm on that. I think that if you look at the health and other studies, especially 2 that were recently released by the USC School of Medicine and reported in the June 24th Los Angeles Times, they show the increased danger of living within 500 feet of a freeway and how increased traffic on freeways affects people's health. The city of Glendale and its residents, once they become aware of that, are not going to be in favor of any increased traffic on either the 2 or the 210 or the 134. They all come into Glendale. With regard to the tunnel study, what I would urge you to do is to proceed cautiously. As Dr. Schneider, our Mayor Pro Tem, pointed out earlier when he gave our city's position quite accurately, we do not oppose sound research of a tunnel alternative. The question is whether or not this current study really engages in sound research of a tunnel alternative. Originally, I believed that it did. It was to be a technical feasibility study, studying the geotechnical, geologic, and hydrological issues relating to the construction of a tunnel on a route-neutral basis. And by the way, those who say it doesn't affect Glendale are wrong. It is really a true route-neutral study. There are 5 zones that are being studied. If you take your hand and lay them out, if you were to put the base of your hand along the 10 freeway and spread your fingers like this, where the 710 currently ends, that shows you the 5 zones that are being studied. Glendale is, I believe, in Zone 2 and touches onto Zone 3. And one of the alternatives that's being very strongly considered is a connection to the 2. They talk about the shortest distance being a straight line. If I were to approach Mr. Quintero from here, the shortest approach would be straight up the middle. That's not the most logical approach. The most logical approach is for me to go 10 feet to the right and then in through the door. When you're dealing with subsurface conditions and you don't know what's below the ground, you don't know what the most logical approach is going to be, which is why it needs to be a route-neutral study. You have to look at groundwater, seismic faults, geologic conditions, geotechnical conditions, all the other conditions that you can't see below the ground. It's quite possible that the best route will be through the middle of San Marino, or it's quite possible that the best route will be slightly to the west and connect to the 2. We don't know. But to say that this issue does not affect Glendale is completely wrong and misleading. So I just urge you to approach this cautiously. Thank you very much.
Mike Mohill, followed by Anthony Portantino.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero, council members. Name is Mike Mohill, resident of Glendale. On June the 12th, I wrote a letter to the editor of Glendale News Press. And when I sent the original letter in, I titled it, "NIMBA is alive and well in Southern California." The Glendale News Press called it, Politics is obstructing a needed freeway." Did some calculations here. I'm 67 years of age, believe it or not, well preserved. And I drove the freeways for 27 years as a salesman, from Glendale to Gardena, El Monte, all over the county. And that's why I'm crazy, you know, because of all the fumes from the freeways. Okay? Thank you. Okay? Now, if I listen to the people who oppose this idea, well, let's go backwards first. This idea has been studied for 28 years. That means I was 39 years of age when this thing first came up. And if we study it again for another 28 years, I'll be 95. Wow. My great-grandchildren might enjoy this freeway extension. The lady from La Cañada, who was opposed to this extension, says we should use public transportation more. I'd like to ask her, when was the last time she used the bus and took the bus? I was in New York about 10 days ago. I took the subway all the time. Okay? NIMBA, alive and well in Southern California, not in my backyard. What would Glendale be like if we didn't have the 2 freeway, the 134, or the 5 freeway? Would we be the 3rd largest city in the county? Would Mr. Rick Caruso put in the Americana at Brand? We are a vibrant city because of the freeways. And yes, the people who live close to the freeways suffer. There's nothing you can do. Maybe we should go back to the Stone Age. We'll all walk. I mean, this is the 2009 already, almost 10. Are we going to go backwards? Tunneling, to me, is the bad idea. Why should we spend so much more extra money when everybody else in Southern California has above ground? It's much cheaper. I just think the people in South Pasadena and the people who opposed it okay, are just arrogant. They love using our freeways through Glendale. Why don't we charge them $1,000 a year for using our freeway? After all, we suffer for their beauty. Not in my backyard. Isn't that wonderful? Mr. Majoran, Councilman, leadership is here. We need to get this ball rolling. It's been studied to death. I don't want to be 95 when I come back here again. Thank you.
Thank you. Anthony Portantino, and then the final card is actually Robert Alexander.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Mr. Mayor, if I could, first of all, I want to congratulate you on becoming mayor, Mr. Mayor, and the newly elected council members. It's my first chance to be here to congratulate you. If I could ask for your indulgence to have a little extra time to talk about Task Order 5 and how that came about and give a little historical
Okay, how much time did you want?
Well, I'll try to move as quickly as possible.
I've been giving everyone 3. How about 5?
I will do my best. Thank you very much. You know, I've often said that good government is too high a price to pay for any project. And my involvement in this project goes back 12 years when I sat on a city council as mayor many years ago when Caltrans, SCAG, and MTA came to present this project. What I've learned in those 12 years is precisely why it's important for you to take action tonight, and I commend you for putting this on the agenda and hopefully taking action tonight. Because what they've done is they've nickeled and dimed us. They've done everything possible to move this project along. They first said we wouldn't move it forward without a feasibility study. They went to Adam Schiff, they got $3.5 million, and then suddenly only spent $500,000 on a fatal flaw analysis and chose not to do a feasibility study. Then when that was called into question, they said, oh, well, wait a minute, we'll go out and we'll do a full-fledged study, we'll spend $13 million. Well, on May 8th, I found out that they're not actually doing a feasibility study, they're only doing an analysis of subsurface soils. Again, the region was told a feasibility study, it wasn't, the promise was not kept. When I was on the city council, we asked to see the scope of work of that first study. They would not let us see the RFP, but then went out publicly and said they consulted with us. They refused to let us see the scope of work. When the city of South Pasadena asked if trucks would be going through the tunnel, they were told no. When Sid Tyler at the city of Pasadena asked if trucks would be going through the tunnel, he was told no. Other cities that support the tunnel were told yes. When I asked them at the City of La Cañada City Council meeting why they were telling different stories to different cities, I got no answer, and I asked if they would go back and correct the record. I was told no. Again, on May 8th, I found out that the region was again falsely promised a feasibility study, and all of the documents called it a feasibility study, but it is in fact $6.5 million spent on an analysis of subsurface soils. Why would an organization continue to withhold information on cost, on size, on orientation, on depth, on traffic, if they were not continually trying to move this ball forward and nickel and diming the public by continuing to celebrate and move it forward? That is the fundamental question, and that's why it is important for Glendale to take a position of no gap closure, and in particular, no tunnel. The gentleman who talked about the amount of excavation that will be removed through your city, the 15 to 20-year construction that will disrupt life for a project that Caltrans' own engineers say on the day it will open at level service F. What's interesting about that? Caltrans' own warrants say don't build a freeway that is worse than level service E. So why would they be contemplating a project that violates their own protocols? Why would they even be here pushing a project that by their own rules should not even be considered? When we talk about moving people through the region, it is true this will be a magnet for trucks through Glendale, through the 134, to the 2, to the 210. It will disrupt all of our lives. For Mr. Reed to stand up here and say, you know what, I've been pushing this project through every other community for decades, but now that it's going to threaten my own city, we should oppose just that part of it, is pretty ironic to me. The low build alternative has been brought up. Why would the communities who are affected not support traffic signalization, traffic orientations? The low build alternative is a combination of surface traffic improvements to solve their problems. Why would a region routinely accept not having the gold line be funded, which again would take people off of these roads, but to perpetuate the necessity to keep this project moving forward. It is imperative, and again, I commend Glendale for putting forth this issue on the table. Task Order 5 came about because when I was briefed on May 8th, and I found out that they were not doing all of the information and not conducting all of the studies that the region was promised, suddenly Task Order 5 showed up as a result, without any public review, without any public scrutiny, and even Adam Schiff has said, don't move forward until the public has a chance to wade in on further review. What Mr., I think, if I could say your name, Mulhill pointed out, I don't know if I said that properly or not, he talked about this has been studied for 28 years. In fact, it hasn't been studied at all. And therein lies the irony. We've had half attempts, half-baked efforts to continually move this project forward so people can say and celebrate. When the fatal flaw analysis was conducted, there were celebrations that this project was going to move forward. Only later was it recognized that it was failed to include the financial data, failed to include the traffic data, failed to include geotechnical data. They have not even consulted the USGS, the preeminent geological society from the U.S. government, which is right here at Caltech. They have not even consulted them on seismic activity in this region, but yet they declared this project feasible in the fatal flaw analysis. Every attempt has been made to move it forward without actually doing the work. That's why I've changed my position from my 4-page letter to Caltrans asking them to do all of this work to say, you know what, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. Fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. It's got to stop. We've got to draw a line in the sand. Right now in New Jersey, they're doing a 3.5-mile tunnel from New Jersey to New York with a $10 billion estimate. This is a mile longer through rock, through fault lines. It will be $15 to $20 billion, but yet they routinely say $2 to $5 billion. And then they say, but we haven't looked at all the information. Why won't they put accurate information on the table? Why won't they put the traffic analysis germane to toll roads on the table? Because they know if they show you how that traffic will back up onto your surface streets, you will be outraged. It's time to say enough is enough. It's time to say no gap closure because it doesn't solve a problem, it doesn't increase better air pollution, better air quality, and it doesn't solve a traffic problem regionally or locally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Final card is Robert Alexander.
Tiebreaker. 13, there's been 13 for, 13 against.
Oh, that's interesting.
Exactly.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name's Robert Alexander. I'm business agent of Reinforcing Iron Workers Local 416. I went to Cal State LA in 79 and 80. I commuted from San Dimas, and believe me, I tried every way, every highway, every side street, every shortcuts on top of shortcuts, and it was just a nightmare for 2 years that I went to school, and I commuted back and forth to San Dimas. The project is long overdue and well needed, and I want you to know that you have the best iron workers right here between locals 416 and 433. We are very excited about the possibility of building this unique tunnel. Give us a shot at it. Let's go forward. On behalf of the members of 416, I urge you to go forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's the final card. Comments from the city council or questions?
May I start? I don't care. Taking a lot of notes, so I'll be all over the map responding. I'll just go through some. I can understand two sides, the technical side and the emotional side, and they're both at play. When I was elected to city council in 1997, I thought my task was to do my homework, to study, to ask questions, before I made a decision and a vote. I've seen virtually nothing yet to do that with. Little stuff, a feasibility study, looking at geotech borings. Skipping around. Any of you see the EIR on the Americana? Was it 18 inches high? I have nothing. That document's supposed to be used by council members to inform them on the impacts of anything that is planned and how you can possibly mitigate for them. But we're looking at alternatives, feasibility alternatives. I have to go by what I did as my career from my background. I cut you beat, Mr. Mulvihill. I'm 70 years old. I drove on the first freeway there was, before any of the local freeways are around. But in my career with the City of Los Angeles and the Army Corps of Engineers as a civil engineer and as a project manager, I took projects from day one, initial alignments going all over the place, to literally construction and completion. One project I spent 20 years on when I retired, they were still finishing it up. This project will never be built, probably in the lifetime of most people seated here. It's been studied. I was looking at it in the 1970s. And I served on the Arroyo Verdugo subregion, and we talked about it. And we're talking about it today at the feasibility level. And then this was handed out. The purpose of the tunnel feasibility study is to continue with the geotechnical study. If you don't know what's down there, you can't even begin to consider if you're going to do a tunnel or not. Additional scope of the tunnel feasibility study will include traffic, air quality, noise, fire safety, and cost considerations. Very preliminary, sketchy information. You haven't even got an alignment yet to start talking about one alignment and then starting to lay out not even detailed plans, just alignment studies. Alignment study. It says the outcome of the study will be used for screening purposes, not alignment, screening. Which direction could it go? A more detailed evaluation of these technical tasks will be carried out in future phases. You've got years to go. So I understand it's an emotionally charged issue. I know the impact up in La Crescenta. But I also understand as an engineer from the Caltrans standpoint, it's very obvious this was to connect through. So there's two sides. Who's right, who's wrong? I don't think anybody knows yet because we haven't gone far enough to do it. Now let's see, what can I say? Panama Canal, I said before, is being widened. All the traffic that's going to the eastern seaboard is going to bypass the Port of Los Angeles and go through the Panama Canal and come up. So that's going to be, it's not going to affect the traffic going up to the San Joaquin Valley. And I don't think the tunnel will have much impact on the streets in South Pasadena, because the tunnel's going straight through, has been said. I don't know what the solution there, because when I drive on Fremont and some of those others, especially at rush hour, it's terrible. This city, has been said, in Southern California, we can't give up our cars. We grew up on cars as opposed to the East Coast, where tunnels and rail was in for decades. We had streetcars, I rode them, but we took them out and put buses in. We cannot give up our cars and our buses, never will. Now we can, because wherever the streetcars went, well, sold off that land, put apartment buildings in the way, and blocked off the tunnels and put more condos. So you're not going to do that again. Technology. Sit on the airport authority. A decade ago, I asked a gentleman who worked for JPL, Carl Raggio. He says, we're eliminating stage 2 aircraft, we're going to stage 3. So I said, when's the stage 4 coming? He says, it's coming. And we're seeing it today in cars, hybrids, different forms of technology that are evolving. Green technology. Cars eventually are going to be silent, running. They're not going to make the noise. They're going to be clean. We're seeing hybrids now. We made more progress in the last 2 or 3 years on that than we did in decades. Same with planes. They'll eventually be quiet because of design and technology advances. So, if you eliminate, if the 210, if the tunnel went through and connected to the 210 and you have quiet cars and they're not emitting anything, then what is the problem? Because it's very obvious the 210, its design capacity has not been met. It's running too light. That's just the reality of it. Poles. You can structure any pole to give you the results that you want. So the questions, I looked at them before and threw it away because they're weighted to give the preferred answer. So I don't go with that. I talked about the Americana, the EIR. Oh, I can't wait to see the doozy of an EIR on this thing. It will be that high whenever they get to it. That's only to tell the decision makers what they need to know. I worked on the Alameda Corridor. Fine. You want to put a subsurface rail car? Fine. Yeah, put it on the rail. And wherever you get it to, okay, now what do you do with the rail cars? You got to unload them and disperse it. So what are you going to do? Build big parking lots and bring in all the equipment, like at the ports, to unload all the carts and load it onto other modes of transportation, trucks, to move it out again? There's a lot of things to think about when you start talking about doing something like this. And just imagine, if we didn't have the 134 freeway, and you live in the San Gabriel Valley and you want to work in San Fernando Valley or Thousand Oaks, or vice versa, without the 134 freeway, where do you think those cars would be going to get where they're going? Colorado, Glen Oaks, whatever. The freeways were designed to move transportation. Los Angeles continued to grow beyond what it should have grown. It continues to grow. So and people were loving their cars. They're all on the road. Now our freeways are impacted. What are you going to do? Let's see. Freeways, yeah. The carpool lane, what are they going to do now? Toll. Well, they can do it now. I didn't know that. They have a way structured on the loading on the freeways during traffic hours or whatever, tell you not to get on. When you get on, you have a box sitting on top of the car and it takes care of you automatically. That's progress. Who knows what's going to happen? Tunnel better. What else did I write here? I can't remember that one. But I'll tell you, nothing is going to get done. You know why? Because the boys up in Sacramento have a structurally unsound budget, and they're not going to fix that in our lifetime. So where the heck is the money coming from to build this, even if it's feasible? And alternatives to it, where's that money coming from? It won't happen until the public raises up an ire and tells their elected officials, get your act together. And when they do decide, half of you are going to be happy and half of you are going to be disappointed. Because you can't build a city, you can't build a street, you can't build anything without it offending somebody. We do a flyover bridge, and we've been ripped for a flyover bridge. Too much noise. Oh, construction makes noise. We don't want noise. Don't want the Flower Street crossing. Oh, it's going to put traffic into our streets. Well, anything you do is that way. But in this particular case, folks, we have a long way to go. That's why I support study of, let's do more study, let's get more information. It does not mean I'm voting for or against a tunnel. And I probably won't even have the privilege, or I don't know if it's a privilege, to sit here and vote for or against it. And even if the city council does, is Sacramento going to care what Glendale thinks? Nope. Because the politicians up there will decide when they have the money to do it. So, one thing, I tell you, based on my background, I cannot vote against a project when I have nothing to look at. That was my career. That's what I needed to do my job. Totally premature. We're in a feasibility stage doing geotechnical work only. So I have a lot of frustration. We don't know anything yet. So I'll support the B or whatever it is for, where is it? Continued study. And somebody said in here, sound research. Oh, we'll be talking to Caltech, we'll be talking to everybody about earthquake faults underground, we'll be talking about groundwater conditions. Who knows what's down there? So much of our area is sitting on alluvial fans that came down through the centuries, boulders down there. Might find some dinosaurs down there too, if we're lucky. That'll take care of it. Anyhow, sorry I talked long enough and I jumped all over that place, but this is only the beginning of a long time, and none of us will be around to see the end of it.
Ms. Friedman.
First, I'd like to thank the guests who have come in from other cities to come here and talk to us. I appreciate your testimony here, and I'm also a believer in regional planning. These are big issues. Highways involve many cities, and they involve all of us, so it's important that we keep talking. So I appreciate your being here. Thank you very much. One word came up a lot tonight, and it's something that I was thinking of a lot when people were speaking, and that's the word progress. And I agree that progress is a lot of what this has to do with. And it's a big term, but it's a big project. It involves a lot of money, and will do a lot to shape this region, and that kind of money can have a very big effect in whatever it's used for. The highway system in Los Angeles has a lot to do with how we live, and cars have a lot to do with how we live. And it's going to be to no surprise to those of you who have been watching me at this council for the last 4 months that I believe that the way that this city has developed and the way that we live now is not sustainable, and something that as we move into the future will change. It's interesting that somebody made the comment that the 710 should have been completed and it should have been completed above ground. And it just goes to show the kind of priority that we have traditionally in Los Angeles put on cars and on the movement of cars, that we're willing to entertain the idea of taking an entire community, a beautiful historic community that's very loved by its residents, and destroy it by putting a highway through it. And that's considered something that is a rational way to move traffic around Los Angeles shows that I believe that our priorities have been put in the wrong place for a very long time. That it's become less about how we live and how our residents live and more about moving our vehicles around. And that's become the predominant issue in this city. And anybody who's lived in other large cities around the country knows that it's not always the way that cities work. That there are cities that have as many people as Los Angeles that function differently. Of course, the people who live there have very different expectations. They don't all expect to own a car. But there's also alternative ways for them to get around their cities. And Los Angeles has done a very bad job over the years of creating those sorts of alternatives for people that are easy and convenient and that really get you places, and have made it to where people really do need to have their cars. But then into the mix of this we throw the Port of Los Angeles. So we throw a port that's going to move goods all over the country from this coast, that then will move its freight around the highways of Los Angeles that are already crowded by people's expectations of every single person owning a car and wanting to move across the great distances of Los Angeles by highway. And you have a completely untenable situation. You have freight being moved by truck through one of the most densely populated cities in the country that is also a city that has a very unusual expectation of everybody moving themselves around the city by car. And you have a situation that as we progress into the future doesn't work. If we really want progress, we wouldn't be focusing on the highways. We'd be focusing on other ways of getting freight around. Because no matter what we do to the highways, we're never going to have real progress. until we reduce that burden of those trucks moving through our city. We're given as a council and we're given as a region, all of us, a Sophie's choice, an impossible decision to make. Either we don't take the burden off of Alhambra and the other cities to the east of us who are unfairly burdened, who have been for years suffering because of a highway that was never completed, or to fix their problem, we sacrifice a part of our city. The people who live in La Crescenta are not NIMBYs. They're simply people that have had something that the rest of the people who live around highways didn't have when those highways were put in. And that's, they have the benefit of seeing the negative effects that those highways have brought to the people who live around them. The people who lived around all of our other highways, the 5, the 710, the 405, would have been just as adamantly opposed to those highways going in if they'd had a crystal ball and been able to look into the future to see what those highways would have looked like today. So no, those are not NIMBYs. And they're not people who are unsympathetic. They're just people who have the value of seeing what has happened to the rest of the city and don't want that in their community, who don't want the traffic, who don't want the smog, and all of the rest of those negative impacts that are undeniable. So we have a Sophie's choice here. Do we not extend the courtesy of our neighbors to help them with their problem? Or do we sacrifice our own community? And it's an impossible choice, and it's one that I'm not willing to make in either direction, because I think that what Caltrans and the MTA should be concentrating on is moving all of the freight out of Long Beach by rail. And I don't know why we don't have legislation that says if you have a freight that's moving 90 miles or more away from the city of LA, you cannot put it on one of our highways. What would this amount of money, $15 billion, $10 billion, do to extending our freight rail system? I don't know, but I've got to think that it would take a big chunk of those trucks off of our roads. That's the only solution that will give us real progress. Once you do that, whether or not you close the 710, close it, you won't have the same impacts, because then you really are talking about cars, and maybe it wouldn't be opposed. Or maybe you wouldn't need to close it, because if you take the trucks out of the equation, maybe Alhambra and those other cities wouldn't be so badly impacted. But I'm not willing to sit here and tell everybody up in La Crescenta, we're going to now turn your highway into a giant parking lot for trucks, let those trucks spill out onto the surrounding roads, when rail has never seriously been thought of as an alternative. So my position is, I'm not even interested in discussing the 710. To me, it's not an issue. It's a red herring. Really, the issue should be, how do we move all of this freight by rail? And public transportation, that's another big part of this whole equation and something that we should be focusing on. Dealing with the 710, it's a red herring, it's a patch, it's the old way of thinking that all of our fixes are build more highway, make the highways wider, make them wider, make them wider. Every study that's ever been done says every time you widen a highway, you just invite more traffic. When we you close the 710, you're just going to invite more and more trucks and more traffic. If we really want progress, let's move away from the highways and think about other ways of moving people and freight around Los Angeles.
Okay, who's next?
Okay. Well, I'm glad that this is before the Glendale City Council at this point. Disagree with Mr. Weaver to wait and to hold off any decisions until he gets his 2-foot stack of EIRs. I think the time to make comment is now. First off, I want to say that I do feel for the residents of Alhambra, Temple City, San Marino, South Pass, El Sereno, that are enduring the terrible increase in traffic that you are currently experiencing, and that's a shame. I don't think any community needs to put up with that. The problem is that, in my opinion, the 710 tunnel and an expansion of the freeway system connecting the 710 to the 210, or perhaps even to the 2 freeway, is just a extension of what I called Eisenhower-era transportation planning. In fact, it may even go before Eisenhower, it may even be Truman era. It's an anachronism in the 21st century. It's an anachronism in a county and a region like Los Angeles and Southern California. The time to build the 710 connection has passed. The time to build it was maybe 50 years ago. That window, unfortunately, is closed. I think we all have to come to grips with that. However, we have to be a little positive and realize that we have so many other options to relieve traffic and to get goods transported. We have light rail. We have bus rapid transit. We're working on the Wilshire subway, the Orange Line, the Gold Line. And to everyone from the San Gabriel Valley, I want you to know that I have stood firm. I have stood firm in the face of a lot of opposition at the MTA to support an extension of the Gold Line to Azusa and beyond. That's the type of transportation growth that I think is smart. It's efficient. It's clean. There's Metrolink. There's carpool lanes. There's DMUs, diesel multiple units, except they're not diesel anymore. They're hybrid multiple units, small trains, which can use the existing rail lines to help people get back and forth. My good friends in labor, I don't want you to worry. You're going to get plenty of work. We're building a Wilshire subway. I hope soon we'll be building light rail cars in Los Angeles, in a green corridor, in a LEED certified green building. You're going to have plenty of good, clean work that you can be proud of. And I know you're very good, all the trades, from the electricians to the iron workers to the painters. You're going to have plenty of work. This is the dawning of an era of incredible transportation projects. Almost all of them are going to be clean and beneficial to the entire community. The problem with the tunnel is it's so expensive. $12 billion today. By the time we finish our EIRs and get those 2-foot stack of documents, maybe $14 billion, $15 billion. It's the wrong type of message to send. It's the wrong type of money to spend promoting single passenger vehicles and goods transport. Goods transport should be from the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach on dedicated railways through the Alameda Corridor, to the Alameda Corridor East, to the North County Inland Port that Supervisor Antonovich is promoting, to an inland port in the Riverside and further east. And yes, there are large parcels of land there. And yes, there will be the mechanisms available to take those transport cargo containers, place them on trucks, and then let them distribute throughout the United States. Let them distribute up the I-5 from that point on. We have an urban setting, and we need to get those container vehicles off the roads. And when those container vehicles get off the roads, guess what? The freeways clear up. You don't have to take that shortcut down Fremont anymore. You can get on the 5. For the money we're spending, we could build a series of light rail lines which will connect the entire area. And we're doing that right now, folks. We're doing that right now. We're opening up the East Side extension, which is going from downtown to the East Side and further on to perhaps the Whittier area. The Gold Line plan has been advanced. It's going to go from where it currently terminates all the way down east to Azusa, perhaps down to Ontario Airport. That's what we need to do, is to get people out of their vehicles onto this type of rail. And it's going to free up the vehicles. Not everybody. Not everybody can take a rail line or take a light rail or take a rapid bus like our Orange Line, which is extremely successful and extremely inexpensive. But people, there are many people that have that commute day in, day out, from home to work, from work to home. For those type of people, the mass transit and the light rail is going to be a quick and efficient way to move around. The 710 connection is not just a freeway connection. It's not just a gap. It's a connection of a truck route from the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. And, as you know, a huge portion of the goods that the United States uses comes in those ports and comes right through Los Angeles. Who's going to pay those tolls when the tolls eventually come to be? Is it going to be the soccer moms in the minivans? Probably not. Is it going to be that 18-wheel trucker who has plenty of money on the line, who's ready to put the hammer down and get through that tunnel and get through Pasadena, La Cañada, La Crescenta, Glendale, Sunland, Tujunga? Of course, they're the ones that are going to do it. Some people have said we should hold off. You people, hold off. Don't make a decision now. Well, that's a little disingenuous. Are the proponents holding off? Is the 710 Coalition holding off? With their newsletters touting their success. They probably have the champagne on ice already. The path to today's 710 success. Yay, Cedillo's bill passes. Poor Portantino. His anti-710 bill dies in committee. The proponents are certainly starting and pushing. To ask the rest of us to not take a stand and wait is really disingenuous. I think it's perfectly acceptable and perfectly timely for us to make a comment. I want to say, again, to reiterate, that for the communities that are affected with the traffic, I know how difficult it is. I have been there. I used to date someone on Fremont Avenue, but my wife isn't listening. Not while we were married, though. let's be clear about that. Before I was married. But I do want to say that I am committed to regional transportation improvements. I will work with John Fasana, your representative for the San Gabriel Valleys, to do whatever needs to be done and look at some of those multimodal, low-build alternatives to get the traffic flowing. And I think if you combine all these ideas, light rail, transport by freight, multimodal, low-build alternatives, I think that we can work and have success at not only cleaning up the air and the environment, but also making your quality of life in your cities much better than it already is. And I am committed to do that in any role that I play, whether it's sitting on the Glendale City Council or whether it's sitting on the MTA. I do want to say that part of my efforts in helping you, and this isn't just lip service, and I've bragged about it in the city of Glendale, so maybe you guys can close your ears, you've heard about it before, but when the MTA had several $100 million of money that they were going to decide how to spend, my motion wrestled it away from the MTA and distributed it to the cities on a per capita basis. Glendale got approximately $6 million, I think, based on our size. I'm sure each and every one of your cities got your pro rata per capita share. That's money that you can use to help your infrastructure, to help your traffic problems, lights, synchronization, road widening, etc. So that's where I am. I'm not a NIMBY. I do see the big picture, and it's by working together, by attacking this problem, and it's a problem that everyone faces, attacking it in this multimodal way that we're going to solve our problems. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Draymond.
Well, I'm going to first let me take the mystery out of where perhaps some of you are concerned where this may go. I'll start by saying that I plan to support action item 8A1, the resolution to oppose the tunnel alternative. Now let me get into my comments about it. I'm not going to repeat the topics that were already covered by my colleagues, but I wanted to make some observations. Assemblymember Portantino is here, and it's interesting, you were talking about when you were serving as a council member, you didn't mention the city, but I think we all know what city that was, our neighbor, La Cañada Flint Ridge. And when you served on the Arroyo Verdugo, as I did years later, not only were they talking about it then, they were talking about it when I served. It was almost like, don't pay attention to that man behind the curtain. That's the attitude, you know. We don't have a plan. We just sort of have a plan. We want to keep it moving forward, but we don't have a plan. It's interesting. It's a kind of linear thinking, and I like to poke fun at my colleague, Mr. Weaver, because... Thank you. Because engineers think in a particular way, and non-engineers think in another way. And
Logical.
yeah, and you know, and that's what I wanted to get at. Thank you, Mr. Weaver, for bringing it back up. You started your comments with, there's a technical side, and then there's an emotional side. There's a whole world in between the two, Mr. Weaver.
That's right.
There's the common sense side. There's the, how about the reasonability side? How about the fiscally responsible side? And how about the quality of life side? These are all real, and they are tangible to our constituents. I want to, Mr. Myers, David Myers spoke earlier, and this issue reminds me a great deal of how I first met Mr. Myers. It was in, this won't mean a lot to those of you who are here from areas remote from Glendale, but we have an area in our city called Mountain Oaks. It's a beautiful, historic, and undeveloped area. And in October of 2006, before running for office, I started writing editorials in the newspaper about preserving Mountain Oaks. And the argument I heard at that time is, there's no plan to do anything with Mountain Oaks. Just leave it alone. You know, seems to me that it was worth preserving, whether or not there was a plan immediately on the table or not. And this is very similar to that. You know, I want to address one other thing, and that's about this issue of NIMBY. Mr. Mohill brought it up, and some others. Listen, folks, I'm an elected official, an elected advocate for the residents of Glendale. Okay, I don't find that there's anything embarrassing, wrong, or inappropriate about putting the needs of Glendale residents first. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. I am, like my colleagues have mentioned, I am truly sorry about the congestion in the cities to the east of Glendale. I've also driven in it. I know exactly what it's like, and Mr. King's comments about trying to get to his father and being stuck in traffic is compelling. However, the idea that we should close the gap so that areas that have been completely messed up by the 710 terminating in their area, we should simply share the wealth with Glendale and bring that to this city. Just don't play with me. And I don't think it's in the best interest of the residents of this city, and I won't support it. I didn't have the opportunity when I served on the Verdugo Arroyo subregion committees to stand up and say no. But for my own city, I know that we're called upon to make statements and take votes that demonstrate our leadership in our city for our residents. Glendale is the third largest city in the county of Los Angeles. And if you think for a moment that the comments made by the city of Glendale's representatives, the collective comment from this city, no, we don't want this, we oppose this, mean nothing, you're wrong. You're wrong. And to the extent that it will allow other cities to step forward and take that same step, make that same decision and speak for their constituency, I'm happy to help facilitate that. So I will be, as I said, supporting the resolution at 8A1, And given the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make that, motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Draymond. I'll try and be brief. We've been at it for quite a while. I'd also like to start by thanking the elected officials and the building trade reps for coming this evening, as well as the homeowners from the different cities. I guess my ideas and opinions pretty much mirror Ms. Friedman's. I think it's time to move beyond automobiles. The billions that are going to be spent on a proposed tunnel or other alternative are better used with mass transit, container freights out of the ports. And to my friend and friends in the building trades, and we do have the best iron workers in the world, I agree. They did a tremendous job at the Americana and other projects throughout Southern California. I think what we need to do is focus on mass transit projects in the surrounding commercial and residential areas. That's the future of Los Angeles, hopefully the future of the U.S. You only have to travel and talk to people. I happen to have some cousins who are visiting from Spain. One is a doctor, the other is a college professor, and they travel all over Spain. How do they travel? They travel high-speed rail, intercity subways, et cetera, et cetera. And here in the United States, it's like all we can think of is outdated technology, always looking at the past. We just can't do it anymore. It just doesn't make any sense to me. The people of Alhambra and South Pasadena to a certain extent, but especially Alhambra and El Sereno, they have absolutely taken the brunt of the 710 freeway and all of the other traffic, and they've done it for years and years and years. And it's really a tragedy that that happened to those communities. But I really don't see the alternative. I mean, the idea of spending billions and billions of dollars for this this punch-through, I just don't have any interest in going in that direction. I don't think it makes any sense at all. I think it's time for this region, this state, although we are broke, Mr. Portantino.
I saved your gas tax.
Well, that answers the question. He voted against taking the gas tax. Anyway, I just find this whole concept one that it's time to move past it. So I'm prepared to do whatever the majority is interested in doing. Ms. Friedman.
If that's, I think I would be more comfortable with a resolution that says exactly what we've all said, which is that we would like an alternative that looks at rail, and that we're not interested in the 710 closure as the primary way of moving freight around Los Angeles. The way that the first alternative is worded is it almost sounds like we're not interested in the tunnel, but we might be interested in the highway above ground, which I don't want, and I don't want to send the wrong message. I'd like to be as specific as we can.
Well, that would, Mr. City Attorney, that would move us to item 8A3, basically, or an alternative, or a, rather than that, I would simply propose a resolution opposing the 710 gap closure, and at the same time expressing the city's interest in endorsing the notion of rail, as Ms. Friedman stated.
Well, let's break that into two: container rail coming out of the ports, and then mass transit projects.
Mr. Mayor, maybe a suggestion that there had been some discussion about the low-build, multimodal type concept from the other cities, maybe encompassing that. I know Mr. Najarian spoke of that, or it would be, signalization improvements to existing infrastructure, mass transit of all types, restricting freight to rail, that kind of thing. Just a suggestion.
You're writing away feverishly.
I'm feverishly writing away with some suggestions, and it certainly feel free to reject them. We can modify the resolution at 8A1 to reflect, quite simply, that the council opposes not only the tunnel, but any other gap closure alternative, and then have an additional paragraph, and we can mark that as Section 2, I'm sorry, we'll make that Section 3, where the City Council further expresses interest in reviewing and assessing other non-gap closure alternatives, which could include the low build, it could include rail, whether it be freight, whether it be by container, whether it be rail lines, light rail, heavy rail, or any of the other alternatives, as long as it's not a gap closure alternative.
All right, then, Mr. Mayor, I will move item 8A1 with those modifications.
Second.
Are there any more comments from the City Council? Mr. Weaver.
All these other alternatives that theoretically are on the table today, I'm aware of them all. I've studied most of them, but I still am not in a position with enough information to say no on a tunnel at this time. That's why I will vote no. But all the other alternatives, they're being studied, and hopefully someday we'll have high-speed monorail and all these other methods of transportation, but it won't be in the next 50 years.
Hope you're wrong, Mr. Weaver.
I hope I am wrong, too.
You mean on the part...
Don't worry, I won't be around to know if it...
That's why I wanted a clarification.
One day we will see trains as a technology.
I'll be looking down on... No, God.
Just for the record, Mr. Mayor, I didn't want to include Mr. Weaver's demise in the future in that...
Oh, don't worry.
One of those modifications.
I'm already looking at my mortality.
Okay, roll call, please. Council members: Trammon?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Weaver?
No.
Mayor Quintero? Yes. Thank you for coming. Thank you all very, very much.
We still have more business.
Don't leave now, we've got lots more fun.
Yeah, we got a historical house.
All right, we'll be moving to 9D. 9D